LA senior meteorologist Brian Vandegraff. Well, Helene made landfall shortly after 11 last night as a major Category 4 hurricane with winds of 140 miles per hour. It's now weakened to a tropical storm, but Helene still packs a serious punch and will produce dangerous amounts of rain over the next few days. At least 3 deaths are already blamed on the storm, but officials feel more people will be discovered as they access these flooded areas. Power is also a major concern across the South, where over 3 million customers across 4 states are without power. And right now, the storm is battering Atlanta and North Georgia. A state of emergency has been declared there, along with numerous other states and Helene's path. Many streets in the city are already flooded, where an estimated foot of rain has fallen. There are also water rescues underway, including a man and his dog who were pulled to safety by local firefighters. Our storm chaser Brett Adair was in the Big Bend when Helene made landfall. You can see and hear the power of the hurricane force winds as they bent trees and lashed traffic signs. Those winds also destroyed a communication tower, which was sprawled across a road in the town of Madison. The storm made it very tough to be outside throughout the night.
All right, in the Big Bend area, Hurricane Helene is packing a punch right now. The rain is certainly pushing me around, and it's got a little bit of a bite to it. This is all kind of in the last hour or so. Really on time is what we expected.
And as strong as those winds were, the storm surge is likely going to cause the most damage in the storm. It's also the deadliest part of any tropical storm. There are fears it could be as high as 20 feet along of Florida's Big Bend. That's where Steinhatchee is, and we are hearing about many flooded roads and homes there. The surge broke records in the Tampa area, where cars, boats, and buildings in the downtown area were all flooded. Many had to be rescued from rising waters. This video is from Fort Myers, Florida, where sheriff's deputies pushed a boat against a strong current to get to the people. The water was waist high in many areas. So here's a look at where Helene is right now. The storm is centered over North Georgia currently, right now about 35 miles south-southwest of Clemson, South Carolina. Maximum winds are right now at 60 miles per hour with 90-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Tropical storm warnings still posted for portions of Georgia and South Carolina coast. There are also flash flood warnings in both states and tornado watches through the Carolinas into this evening. Over the course of the day, it will continue moving northwest before settling over the Kentucky-Tennessee border later tonight. That's where it will sit and spin around for the next couple of days, bringing heavy rain to that region. Eventually, that rain kind of being pulled into another system, all part of that spinning called the Fujiwara effect. Well, near Asheville, North Carolina, flooding started yesterday afternoon. That region is now getting socked with even more rain, and more flooding and even landslides are possible. Rex Hodge is in western North Carolina this morning.
And this is one of the bridges over the Pigeon River here in Clyde, and you can see how high that river is right now. I mean, coming up, just barely getting underneath that bridge right now. In some places here in Clyde, they've had emergency flash flooding situations, and evacuations have had to take place. Where I am, flooded back in '04 with Ivan and Francis, also with Tropical Storm Fred. The Pigeon River is a big concern, of course. And hang on a second. This is exactly what we've been expecting here. A lot of wind gusts coming up. We've had a few of them, one happening right now. And obviously, with such saturated ground out there right now, it's not going to take much to knock down trees and knock out power.
Let's head back to Florida, where Helene made landfall. That's the community of Perry along the Big Bend. It's about an hour from Tallahassee and not far from where Idalia made landfall last year. Tanner Stewart is there this morning to see what damage Helene left behind.
Just behind my shoulder here, this gas station is one of many that we've already seen very similar to this. You can see it's almost destroyed, at least the overhang over the pumps there. And this sign, where we're also parked at a gas station across the street, is virtually gone. There is a palm tree over here in the street, several trees down. We have seen a lot of this just within the last 5 miles north of here. We stopped about 10 miles north of here a couple hours ago, where we stopped and watched FDOT crews work to remove a massive tree out of the highway. It was stopping traffic for several hours. There was a car over in the median looked like it had wrecked some sort, maybe didn't see the tree. We're not exactly sure. There were not any passengers in that car by the time we got there. But again, this is the worst damage we've seen, and we were here just this time last year for Hurricane Idalia, right here in Perry, Florida. So we're going to continue to work our way down and see what we can find. But again, significant damage here. No flooding that we've seen yet.
And we just got this picture from South Carolina. It shows a possible tornado near Pawleys Island. No confirmation just yet, but definitely possible with all that spin in the atmosphere. It was a tough night and rough morning in Macon, Georgia. Gloria Ruth Finney has the latest on conditions there right now.
We came across this downed tree. Now it's across the whole area of 257, but this could pose, some of that really dangerous situation that we've been talking about here. If people are not sheltering in place, actually, I think behind me you can see a car pulling up. That's just what happened just a few minutes ago. Luckily, they were able to see our light and slow down. But I have to be honest with you, as we were pulling up on top of this tree right here, it was very hard for us to even see it until we were just a couple of feet away. So definitely if people are traveling at speeds, less, 35 miles an hour even, it's hard to really see some of this debris that is in the roadway after Hurricane Helene has ripped through this area.
And hurricane hunters had one more chance to fly into Helene's eye yesterday before the storm made landfall. The view in the eye always appears calm, but remember, the crew flew through hundreds of miles of hurricane and tropical storm force winds just to get there. There were rumors on social media yesterday that the crew got stuck in the eye. NOAA quickly said that was not true. One of the crew members said it was a top 3 roughest eye wall penetrations he's ever been part of, but it can tell us that they are home safe here this morning. Here's another look inside at Hurricane Helene, but this time from the water. The storm churned up waves about 20 feet high and winds gusted nearly 45 miles per hour where this sail drone was located north of the eye on Thursday afternoon. Sail drones are uncrewed floating vessels that gather video and other atmospheric information from the ocean's surface. There have been multiple tornado warnings all night and through the morning across portions of the southeast, and that's because hurricanes can be prolific tornado producers. Meteorologist Brandon Stover explains why.
Well, tropical systems can produce a lot of tornadoes. When you stop and think about it, there's some irony here. Hurricanes don't like wind shear, yet they produce plenty of it. These giant heat engines deriving their energy off warm ocean waters simply create their own spin. As they move on shore, it's the right front quadrant of the storm. That's almost always where tornadoes form. In this section, a moist southerly or easterly wind near the ground rushes towards the center. Meanwhile, as you go up in altitude, the wind may be ripping more out of the south, for example. It's that increase in wind speed and change in direction as you go up that is called wind shear. And it just so happens that the eastern side of the tropical system is where you can sometimes find more instability or juice for thunderstorms, since that south or easterly wind more times than not has more of an ocean influence. And when you get thunderstorms or thunderstorm-like showers forming in a highly sheared environment, they can rotate and produce tornadoes. Tropical cyclone-induced tornadoes tend to be on the weaker side, but they can still be very dangerous and sometimes hard to detect on radar.
And coming up on the National Weather Desk, meet some of the folks who decided to take advantage of Helene's power by getting into the Gulf of Mexico. And we'll look back on the lessons learned from Hurricane Ian 2 years after it made landfall.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with a look at the Northeast. It is a seasonably mild day in the Northeast today. Look at these temps. We're back in the low to mid 70s. We'll enjoy a lot of sunshine after a rainy day yesterday. I think everyone in the Northeast will be looking forward to at least some brighter skies. The exception, parts of New York and New Jersey, there'll be a few more clouds mixing in there. That'll be true on Saturday as well. I can't rule out a shower over southern zones here, but most of the Northeast will enjoy some sun on Saturday with temperatures running seasonable in the 60s and low 70s.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the mid-Atlantic region. We're going to be seeing the remnants of Hurricane Helene tracking across the area, bringing rainfall all the way through the mid-Atlantic as we make our way through your Friday. And Friday afternoon, still scattered showers likely. It'll also be quite breezy. By Saturday, we're likely going to get some dry time and hopefully a little bit of sunshine. Temperatures still pretty warm, too. We're likely going to hit the 80s across the coastal regions, especially on Friday and once again on Saturday, with the exception of the mountains in the 70s.
Good morning, I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. Here is a check of your afternoon highs today. A little bit cooler for the areas experiencing the impacts from Helene. Mid-70s, upper 60s there, 80s and 90s everywhere else. We are going to see lots of rain, especially in the Tennessee Valley region in the northern part of Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, mostly because of that low pressure system in addition to the remnants from Helene. Outer rain bands will still be impacting Florida as well.
Well, as Helene approached Florida's Gulf Coast, many surfers decided to find the big waves despite the dangerous water conditions. Megan Scarano was in Panama City with that story.
It can definitely get hairy out there.
Double red flags don't scare these Gulf Coast surfers. Jason Tuno is a lifelong resident who wanted to test out his brand new board on the same day Helene would make landfall. We've got red flags flying. Why'd you get in the water?
It's better waves, honestly. You know, on the Gulf Coast, we're so far up, a lot of the swells don't really reach us. So times like this, we have a little more water.
Before catching the waves, he did make sure some preparations were done at home.
Everything outside had to come inside. You know, sorted out my garage so my car could fit in there if things got kind of crazy.
This was not the first hurricane to be named Helene. In fact, it might not even be the last, although after some of the damage most likely will. Meteorologist Steve Rudin looks back on Helene's hurricane history and why that name may just be retired.
Back in the 1950s, the National Hurricane Center developed a list, 6 in all, of names that would be used for hurricanes. That list rotates every 6 years on a cycle, and if a storm is strong enough, the name is permanently retired. Here are all the named storms since 1958 that have had the name Helene. We'll start off with the most recent back in 2018. Didn't make landfall at all as it moved quickly off toward the north, but let's head farther off toward the west, the Gulf of Mexico. Here we are right now. This is the storm that made landfall last night. Back in 2000, we had another storm that hit Fort Destin, Florida, and in 22 over towards Central America, and then moved back into the Gulf of Mexico and then made landfall again in the Mexico. But for us right now, the strongest storm named Helene that's ever come close to the coastline of the United States. That was way back in 1958, and it just clipped the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Widen the view out just a bit. Again, we've had a couple tropical storms, and then the strongest storms, 2 Category 4s, and that is the history for the names of Helene. And could this storm be retired? It's not out of the question. It all depends on just how destructive the storm becomes. I'm meteorologist Steve Rudin from WJLA in Washington, D.C.
We talk about the strength of hurricanes based on the Saffir-Simpson scale. It's what determines if a hurricane is a Category 1 storm or a massive Category 5. Meteorologist John Gum shows us how the scale categorizes hurricanes.
And those categories are based off something we call the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale. It ranks hurricanes on a scale of 1 to 5. Now, the weakest hurricane that still can produce a lot of damage and a lot of problems is a Category 1 hurricane. Category 1 hurricane has winds starting at 74 miles per hour. And this type of hurricane, the weaker hurricanes, can certainly produce scattered damage. It can give us problems with some storm surge, flooding, heavy rainfall, even isolated tornadoes. Now, as we ramp up to a Category 2 hurricane, that's when the winds start to get stronger. 96 miles per hour is the threshold for that one. And those winds, they're really dangerous. And that's when we begin to see moderate damage occurring. As we ramp up higher to the major hurricane level, which starts at Category 3, that is when things start to get extremely dangerous. We have major hurricane force winds now that occur. And you get not just scattered damage, you get extensive damage that begins to occur as those winds climb higher, 111 to 129 miles per hour. This is a major hurricane. But as we ramp it up, the damage gets worse. A Category 4 hurricane now has wind speeds of 130 miles an hour to 156 miles per hour. A Category 4 hurricane causes catastrophic damage, not just from the winds, but from the storm surge, that big wall of water that gets pushed inland. And as we ramp it up even higher, we go to the Category 5 hurricane. Catastrophic damage with the Category 5. Extreme winds, 157 plus miles per hour with the Category 5 storm, and that's not going to leave much standing. Structures, they fail, and the storm surge that comes with it too can totally destroy buildings near the coast. Category 5 storms we certainly don't want to see.
2 years ago, another massive hurricane struck Florida's Gulf Coast. Hurricane Ian was a Category 4 storm when it made landfall near Fort Myers. It became the deadliest hurricane in Florida since 1935. Meteorologist Veronica Johnson looks back at the storm and some of the lessons we learned from it.
But still a lot of guidance here, where the American model was more on the western side, the European model more on the eastern side. So we're still at odds with the computer model forecast.
And already that push of water inland is occurring, and that's going to be that dangerous storm surge, which could be anywhere between 8 to 12 feet.
Extreme wind warning has been issued. These are very rare.
We're going to go back to home and not be able to recognize it.
The sound of the river running through the bottom floor.
And it was the massive storm surge that caused the most devastation and destruction.
In Fort Myers, in that area where the storm surge has been catastrophic.
The water rose as high as 15 feet in Fort Myers Beach, destroying 900 structures and damaging thousands more.
It's completely gone. I mean, it's like it's wiped off the face of the earth.
This is what Sanibel Island looked like before Ian. This is what it looked like after. You can really see the damaged causeway.
Are you guys okay?
In Naples, the fire department walked through waist-high water to rescue people.
Trees down, motorcycles down, cars crashed into each other.
The numbers are staggering. According to the National Hurricane Center, Ian was responsible for over 150 deaths and more than $112 billion in damage, making it the third costliest hurricane in U.S. history. Only recently did we learn Ian was briefly a monster Category 5 storm with 160-mile-per-hour winds before making landfall as a Category 4.
You get all this stuff ready, but you really just don't think it's going to happen to you.
So what lessons did we learn from Hurricane Ian? Our team of hurricane experts weighs in.
I'd say the lessons we learned from Hurricane Ian are to listen to all of the warnings whenever they're issued.
Even outside of the cone, it's very important to heed the watches and warnings and be prepared for the impacts.
The National Hurricane Center did an incredible job with Ian's cone of uncertainty. Yet, all public eyes were on a Tampa landfall 24 hours out. My friends in Southwest Florida would tell you today that they were surprised by the sudden evacuation orders that came for them on too short notice to act and leave.
And as we go to break, a look at a corn maze ready to welcome visitors in Rhode Island. We're back with more after this.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. Here's a look at your regional weather. It's pretty nice this morning, all the way from Oklahoma into Amarillo, down into Midland. Temperatures in the 50s and 60s, even down into San Antonio at about 65. Still pretty humid as you get down toward the south. We'll watch what's left of Helene moving up and bringing rain through the Tennessee Valley. Meanwhile, low pressure builds out over Texas. Temperatures start to warm back up in that dry air, though. I'm meteorologist Alex Garcia. That's a look at your regional weather.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson, and here's what's happening across the West. We have warming temperatures. Slowly but surely, they're crawling upwards. Triple-digit heat still for parts of Nevada, Arizona, and even into Southern California. So this excessive heat warning continues for these areas as high pressure strengthens, bringing warming all the way up through Denver and into Idaho. That's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, some of this weekend's football games could be impacted by Helene. Katie Morgan has details in this week's football forecast.
Gearing up for another great weekend of football, both Saturday and Sunday. Let's take a look at your college games of the week. And we're going to start in Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama, to be exact. Big game. Georgia taking on Alabama. Temperatures will be around 74 at kickoff. That is a night game. As we head over to Manhattan, Kansas, we've got K-State taking on Oklahoma State in Manhattan, and temperatures looking good in the 80s with sunshine. A little bit of rain possible in State College, Pennsylvania. 66 our temperature here. That is where Illinois is in town, taking on Penn State for the evening hours. And on Sunday, we've got a couple of great matchups as well. The Bills and Ravens have the evening game on Sunday. Looking for a chance of showers here with temperatures around 70 in Baltimore. A big one always, the Vikings at Green Bay. Looking good. Sunshine with temperatures around 73 at kickoff and 80s expected in Tampa. The Eagles in town taking on the Bucks with a chance of showers in Tampa Bay. Hope your weekend is going to be a great one. I'm meteorologist Katie Morgan.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Once again, I'm WJLA Senior Meteorologist Brian Vandegraff. Follow our social pages all weekend as we monitor damage and impacts from Helene. We'll see you.